We're live. We're live. Welcome to Style of Play Football. As always, myself, T Dot. I hope everyone is good and enjoying a good start to their week already. The World Cup is almost upon us. At last, we've got a World Cup to look forward to. The Premier League has been paused up until I think the end of December is when the games will come back. But before we get into all of that and what we're going to be discussing today, if you haven't done so already, I'm going to say on every single video. So if you're new to this, welcome. If you're not new and you've already been on this channel and you haven't clicked subscribe, what are you doing? Please go and subscribe to the channel and make sure you like this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. And make sure you follow the Twitter account, which you can find the link for in the description as well. But I do want to start talking originally why I put this in. Ronaldo dropped a bombshell last night. Well, Piers Morgan dropped the bombshell last night around Ronaldo, his interview, which I think is coming out in the next couple of days. I think it's split over 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, on Talk TV, which you can find on Sky and BT and other television broadcasters as well. But I suppose what I need to do is take this back a little bit, because I think in terms of what Ronaldo, his expectations at the club, what he probably expected when he came into the club hasn't happened. So I think for Ronaldo, it potentially is just a case of I haven't achieved what I wanted to achieve by returning back to Old Trafford. But before we get into all that as well, there's a massive question mark around why did Ronaldo go back to Manchester United? Why did he go back? It was never going to end well. And, you know, if you remember back to the summer before he signed a season and a half ago now, he was at crossroads. You know, Manchester City were the team that looked like they were coming in for him. And then final hours of the transfer almost being done at Manchester City. Suddenly, United come in for Manchester United's legend of a player that they've had previously, Cristiano Ronaldo. It come out now that Alex Ferguson was the reason, which we knew anyway. We all knew already why Ronaldo had signed back with Manchester United was because of because of Alex Ferguson. Because Alex Ferguson is the one that holds the power at United still. All these years later, after him, you know, not being manager, he's still around the club. He still has a massive voice around the club. He's still able to dictate how certain things happen and how certain players have to go. I mean, Ronaldo's 38, you know, at the time he was 36, 37. How is he still allowing Alex Ferguson to dictate how he plans his own life? What kind of power does one man have in order to allow your fate to be in his hands? I don't get that, you know. And I think Ronaldo, ideally, I think Ronaldo should never have gone to Manchester City or Manchester United. I think he would have been in the same boat. I think if he went to Manchester City, there's no guarantee, and you know what Pep is like, there's no guarantee that Ronaldo starts every game. Pep is his own sort of manager. Maybe there would have been a bit more respect from Ronaldo to manager. And we're going to get into some of the sort of snippets that we've been given over the last 24 hours for the interview that's coming out, as I said earlier, later on this week. But I think the fact that Ronaldo's come back to Manchester United, he probably thought he was coming back as a legend. He thought he was going to be coming back as one of those players that will be playing week in, week out. You know, he probably thought that the level of football wasn't as bad as it actually was. And I suppose when you're at a club and you're training with the club week in, week out, and you're seeing potentially some of the players, you know, that aren't playing as well or aren't training as well as they should be, and you're still trying to be on top of your game, and you're seeing certain players not doing that. Someone who is a serial winner, a perfectionist, who wants to be the best at something, you're amongst certain players who potentially aren't to the standard or the level that he wants them to be, or they're just not putting in a shift, you know. And I think that is frustrating. I do think the signing was a bad move. You know, I remember covering it before he signed, and you know, one of the options for me was that he goes back to Portugal, or he goes to America, or he goes to the Far East, you know, the Middle East. I think that would have been the perfect signing for Ronaldo. You know, I think Gary Neville slightly touched on it. I think after one of the games, might have been the Chelsea game, and he touched on it and said, that Ronaldo has a choice to make. He either stays at the top level, and that's another question. Can we still say that United are a top club? Are they still at the top in terms of how they play now, not based on their history or what they've done previously? They're still a massive club in terms of fan base and their history. But I just mean at the moment, can we honestly say that United are actually a top club anyway? I don't think we can. Gary Neville pointed out, he's either got two choices. He either stays at United and understands that there's a role for him to play at the club, but it's not going to be week in, week out, or he goes elsewhere and he finds a club that will allow him to play week in, week out, which, at the age that he is, yes, he keeps himself in shape. But if you've watched United games this season, you'll know that Ronaldo isn't the Ronaldo of 10, 15 years ago. Ronaldo has got older. He's lost the yard of pace that he potentially had. He's not the same player. Sometimes he can't beat players 1v1 anymore because he just doesn't have the pace to do that. So I think there's a lot that comes with that. And I think if we're honest, I think, Ronaldo being Ronaldo, he had a choice to make. Looking back, he made the wrong choice, going back to United. Yes, it helped shirt sales. It quietened down the Glazer outers. They were happy for Ronaldo to come in at that time. And that's something we should talk about because, there was a lot of fans at the time, if you remember, just after the Super League and everything was going on. And a lot of fans wanted the Glazers out, still do. There's a core set of fans at Manchester United that still want the Glazers out, and they're always screaming it. You just don't hear about it. It's only every now and often it gets every so often it gets put into the mainstream media, and you hear about the fans protesting. The fans protest every weekend at Manchester United. It's just that it's not documented on media, in the media as such as it should be. But there was a massive influx of new Glazers out after the Super League, and so on and so on. Mass walkouts after so many minutes, or don't go to the games at all, was the message. But the likes of Ronaldo coming in, Anthony coming in, these sort of signings have quietened down a lot of fans, and a lot of fans were happy when Ronaldo signed for the club. Let's have that right as well. There was a lot of Manchester United fans that were happy to see Ronaldo back at the club. Excitement was in the air for them. Yes, he carried the team. I think we can all say that as well. Ronaldo definitely carried the team. The season he returned back from Europe, he carried that team. Where would United have been without Ronaldo's goals that season? You have to ask those questions as well. But I think since Erik Ten Hag's come in, it's been difficult for Ronaldo because you can tell already there was a clash between Ten Hag and Ronaldo. I think that was one of the first questions. Obviously, in the summer, Ronaldo wanted out. He wanted to leave the club. He didn't want to be at the club. And you could tell, I think one of the first questions from the media to Erik Ten Hag was, is Ronaldo staying? Is he part of the club? Is he part of your setup? And, Ten Hag, I think, was the very first question before he'd even taken the job on officially, was regarding Ronaldo. So I think, it's all well and good. He scores all these goals the season that you needed him to score the goals. And now that, he wanted to leave in the summer, that was probably the perfect time for Ronaldo to go. When Ronaldo wanted to go in the summer, Ten Hag coming in, I think that was the perfect time to allow him to go. Yes, he wanted Champions League football. He wanted, he knew the World Cup was coming up. Possibly he's not as fit as he wanted to be going into that World Cup because of the limited amount of football he's played for United as well. But I think that was the perfect time to let him go. Because what you've done as United fans, or the board have done, the manager's done, is have allowed this whole situation to fester for months now. Ronaldo asked to leave, I think, July, August. We're now in, middle of November. So this has been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks and bubbling away. And it's been bubbling away publicly as well. You think back to, Ronaldo leaving the ground early, going home, not coming on against Tottenham, walking off down the touchline after refusing to come on, going home. The fact that, he didn't return back for preseason. And I think part of the interview is, he's saying that basically he couldn't come back because of his daughter being ill. And I think that was portrayed totally different in the media. I think the media didn't portray it in that way. They portrayed it in a way that was, Ronaldo almost refusing to come back to to Old Trafford, to Carrington, to play for the team. So I think there was that part of it as well, where he put out, I think, an Instagram post and said, I want to come back. The truth will come out. Eventually you'll find out the truth about me, and the situation. And if that is true, if it is true that his daughter was ill, and the club really hasn't supported him. Obviously, remember as well, he lost a child as well. And again, in the interview, I think he touches on that fact that he didn't get the support from, the United's, hierarchy. He didn't get that support, which, I think he says, I was surprised at Liverpool fans for what they did during the game. If you remember, I think it was United Liverpool was the game that he returned back after the passing of his son. And I think there was a Liverpool fan that held up a Ronaldo shirt, and he said he was really touched by that. So, I think this is really a lot of things that have gone on over the last couple of months or so, couple of weeks, and Ronaldo is just at the point now where he needs out. He wants out. He wants out the club. He doesn't want to be at the club anymore. So I think it's difficult, because I think United want to keep him 100%. They want to keep him, otherwise they would have allowed him to go in the summer. But by doing this now, this interview is massive. The bits that I've seen, he says he doesn't respect Erik Ten Hag. I can't think of another manager and player who've had this public kind of, and it's more one-sided. It's more Ronaldo coming out and saying it, but I can't remember a player coming out and saying this at the time of the current manager being in charge, saying that there's no respect. He's not got my respect because he doesn't respect me. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that from a player. You go back to the Roy Keane interview, you go back to the Wayne Rooney interview, both of them, I think, had to, especially Wayne Rooney, 100% had to apologize straight after, and put out a massive statement afterwards as well. After his interview, I think that was just before, I think it was the Derby game, but United fans will be able to quote me on that. But, he had to put out a massive statement because it came out straight after, before a match. The players were warming up and the interviews come out on MUTV. So, these things are common amongst player and manager, but at this level, this magnitude and this level of player, I don't think I've ever seen this. I don't think I've ever seen it. The fact that he's come out, he said, Ralph Ragnick was someone he'd never heard of. How can you coach me if you're not a coach? I think these are things that are true statements. How can a statistician, which is what he is, a data-driven person, a technical person, become a coach? How can you coach Ronaldo? How can you coach one of the greatest players in the world? And I do think there has to be a level of respect and understanding between player and manager. That goes within any profession, whether you're a footballer or you work in an office or a factory. There still has to be that level of respect between the two. And I think what Ronaldo is trying to tell us is that he hasn't got that from Ten Hag. We don't know the conversations that go on in between matches, on the training field, or when he was out to the under-21s, the development squad. We don't know what those conversations were. They could be that Ronaldo was asking a particular thing for reassurances, and maybe Ten Hag isn't providing them. The flip side of that is maybe he is providing reassurances to Ronaldo, but Ronaldo doesn't like what he's being told. So I think this interview that he's done with Piers Morgan is very, very damaging for Ronaldo, more so than United, because I feel at the moment it feels very much, as I've said on here before, I'm a Chelsea fan, so I've had all this with Romelu Lukaku. This feels very much a Lukaku situation again, where player has the power. Player has the power, but at the end of the day, no one's bigger than the club. No one's bigger than the club. So yes, Ronaldo currently has the power because he does. The way he's done this, it's perfect timing. You think there's no United games now. Players have gone away to international duty, joining up for the World Cup squads. He hasn't got to face Ten Hag straight away. I'm sure there'll be talks in between. Maybe there's a discussion that's gone on prior to the interview going out. Maybe there was, Mendes would have probably spoken to associates at United and said, look, this interview's coming out. There has to be that dialogue. I can't imagine this has been recorded the last 2 days. I think this is an interview that's potentially been pre-recorded, many weeks ago. Many weeks ago, I think this interview was recorded many weeks ago, and the timing of it is perfect for Ronaldo because the window's going to open shortly. He hasn't, like I said, he hasn't got to go back to Carrington anytime soon. He's away World Cup squad in Qatar, so you do have to question the motives behind this for Ronaldo. Um, he obviously wants out. The question is where and who. How does he get? Where does he get a club who wants to sign him? What club's going to sign Ronaldo? There was talk of him joining Chelsea in the summer window, and one of the things I said was I wouldn't want him at the club because he comes with a lot of baggage and a lot of problems, and a lot of the people that I was speaking to at the time, some Chelsea fans, some non-Chelsea fans, were calling me crazy for not wanting Ronaldo, and this is a prime example. If something doesn't go Ronaldo's way, it tends to end this way. It tends to end with Ronaldo spitting his dummy out and throwing his toys out the pram and eventually getting his own way. Lukaku situation all over again, and it's worrying because, as I mentioned earlier, Sir Alex Ferguson still having that control over the club, still having control over certain players. You hear the way Gary Neville talks about Alex Ferguson and, the way that Rio Ferdinand talks about Alex Ferguson, the way that Solskjaer spoke about him when he was manager. He didn't park in his space. He wouldn't park in the manager's space at Old Trafford. So, yeah, it's me personally, I don't get it. How I feel like Ferguson is the cancer of the club at the moment. I think once you remove Ferguson, potentially these things wouldn't happen. But at the same time as well, there's got to be accountability from Ronaldo. He's put this interview out now. It's interesting to see how it's going to unfold. And it's hard to dissect from snippets of an interview that's clearly broken down, over 90 minutes or so. Those little sound bites, those little snippets are just snippets. We need to have context and a lot more around what's being said because, one of the parts is, he said he came back, it was still the same, basically exactly how it was in 2012 is exactly how he's come back to it 10 years later. The same sort of catering staff are there, the machinery is still the same, Carrington's still the same, everything is still the same. Nothing's evolved is what Ronaldo's saying. And you look across, down the road 25-30 minutes away at the Etihad and the way that they, the complex that they've got there, the training facilities as well, a world-class, the world-class training facilities. The Etihad's a really good stadium when you think about it. They've got all the additional pitches around it as well. So this is probably where he's coming from. He's probably seeing across the river. You can see the Etihad, you can see what they're doing there, you can see what they're building, you can see what style of manager Pep is, and he's come in, he's been told, you're not going to be the first choice at United, and you can kind of see his point. He's asked to leave. United should have just let him go. I'm sure they would have. They haven't missed him. And you think back to when he didn't come on against Tottenham, that was arguably United's best performance. It was arguably their best performance of the season so far, and he's out of the team. And you see the likes of Bruno Fernandes, you see the likes of Rashford, who's improved whilst Ronaldo's been out the team. Martial's coming into good form now as well. So I think you're seeing certain players within that team flourish a lot more now that Ronaldo's not there. Now that Ronaldo's not in and around the team, you're seeing a lot more from some of these players that have got the talent. Fernandes, like I said, still has to improve, but he's getting better. Casemiro, I think, has helped in that midfield as well. And obviously Christian Eriksen, those two in midfield have been brilliant so far this season. But yeah, this interview is going to be very explosive, very, very explosive. I think it's one of those interviews that we might look back on and say that this is a moment where certain players will try and replicate this in a couple of years. As I said, Lukaku done it. It worked for him. He got what he wanted in the end. He got to move back to Inter Milan. But my question is, where does Ronaldo go? Where does Ronaldo go from here? Where does he go? What does he do? Does he go back to Portugal? Does he retire? Does he go to the United States? Does he try and push for a move to Chelsea? there's not many clubs that will go for him. City won't touch him now. They've got Haaland. They've got players there. They've brought in Jack Grealish. They've got Phil Foden. They've got Riyad Mahrez. They've got all these players there. They don't need him. Does he go to PSG? I don't think they need him. Does he go back to Real Madrid? Could he go back there? I don't know. Where does he go from here? So he must have something up his sleeve. Maybe he's got some sort of negotiations or pre-contract or pre-discussions are going on with a club for him to be able to do this. Is he trying to call United's bluff? Is he just annoyed? There's so many questions that need to be answered in the interview, I think, and it really will be interesting to the World Cup. It's like I said, it's a weird time for the interview to come out, but it's perfect timing for Ronaldo as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this one unfolds. I'm looking forward to, obviously, the World Cup. We're going to do a preview with that one this afternoon as well, so make sure you stick around for that. But don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as well about Ronaldo, the situation. We're going to be doing a follow-up to this once the interview's out and we've watched it all, and then we can come back and dissect and see where we think he might go, because hopefully he gives us an indication of that in the interview as well. This has been T-Dot, Style of Play Football. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I'll be back this afternoon, I think, maybe in about an hour or so. Make sure you check the Twitter account for any notifications about when we go live, and get involved with the World Cup chat as well later on. Thanks for watching.